So Project Ghostlight is well underway. We are in the middle of planning and shooting and doing all kinds of things to make a chronicle of vampire that is more intense than anything we've done in the past. And we really want to make sure that we are giving something to you guys who are supporting that. So Alex and I wanted to sit down and do a podcast. And one of the things that has come from that is the fact that we've spent so much time and energy planning the main show that we've really got no format or anything for this.
Nope.
We just wanted to talk about games and talk about the way we run games, the way we play games, the way you guys play games, and the systems and formats that we love, the systems and formats that we don't get to play as often, the systems and formats that we just want to shout out and talk about or have discovered, and our experiences playing with friends, with celebrities, on productions, at home, all kinds of stuff. Guys, welcome to the top shelf.
There's shelves behind me. You can't see them. It's fine. Hi, everyone.
I'm Joey Rassool. That is Alex Rassool.
Rassool?
What?
We're related now.
What did we do? So I've already done this so many times. Like the amount of times that I've accidentally made it sound like we live together.
Yeah, no.
Where it's just like, oh yeah, I went home and I saw Alex. So now people are going to think we're related too.
We're related.
I'm Joey Rassool. That's Alex Ward.
We absolutely look related. Hello. Hi, Joey. Yeah. We just want to go over this show will be general tabletop stuff, but I think today we're doing something specific.
We are talking about Vampire the Masquerade. We thought that would be a good place to start because that is, the thing that brought this cast together. It's been a big part of your life. It's been a big part of what introduced me to like the actual play world.
Right.
And it's probably the reason you guys are here in the first place. So when Alex, this is going to be, you're going to have to delve back a little bit.
Oh, no.
When did you first find Vampire the Masquerade? And was it the TTRPG? Was it the LARP? Was it through the video games? Like what introduced you to the world of darkness?
Interesting. Okay, so when I first encountered this horrible place known as the World of Darkness, I think I was in high school. I had never played any tabletop games. Mm-hmm. I had not played D&D. I had not played anything. I knew of D&D. I had bought the 3.5 base books in a bookstore when I was a kid because I was like, oh, I know it. Because I played Baldur's Gate 2. I played a bunch of D&D video games and I wanted to learn about D&D. So I bought the books and then I just looked at the pictures and never played them. So it wasn't until high school when I was, how old are you? I was probably 14 or 15. Depending on
so
what
early
point
in
my freshman year of high school it was. When a friend of mine at the time had the original Dark Ages book and was like, hey, we're going to play a tabletop game like Dungeons and Dragons, but it's about vampires. And I was like, okay, yeah, I want to play.
Yeah.
I played what is now called a Banu Hakim. Because at the time I was really into rogues in D&D.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. I wanted to be stealthy. I wanted to be an assassin.
It's always like, that sounds like first character syndrome in a very strong way that like people often experience with D&D.
Yeah.
And so like the first character syndrome trope fits D&D very well, but it's interesting to hear like first character syndrome from another system.
So it was interesting because like I don't remember anything about that character. I have no idea what they look like. All I remember is that I was a Banu Hakim and that was just what attracted. I think it was the picture in the book I liked and I just picked them.
Yeah.
And then we played one session of that and then never touched it again. So we played that one game of Dark Ages, then never again did we touch Dark Ages.
Right.
It was, I think, then
That sounds
pretty
like most campaigns.
yeah, pretty soon after we started a third edition game, Vampire the Masquerade,
Mm.
which is the beautiful patinaed marbled book that everyone remembers who plays vampire, or had back then, was the very classic looking book. So then, surprise, surprise, I played a Nosferatu.
Oh, okay.
That was my first consistent character, was a Nosferatu. Because in third, there was the Sabbat was still very much its own thing, and like
Right.
there,
You
there
didn't have
were
access to Zamitzi yet.
well, you could, but it wasn't like it wasn't it was you had to work really hard to justify why a Zamitzi would be hanging out with like people in a city.
Yeah.
Like it was they were their own thing. They were like part of the leading powers in the Sabbat, and so they were really supposed to be, I believe, intended by the authors of the book to be non-player character antagonists.
Yeah.
They were creepy, terrible things that you could encounter.
And it's, like, we should touch on this a little bit. We're probably going to touch on this a lot, but we're talking about an era of World of Darkness that had some problematic things that like have not survived through to 5th edition and things like that. And they're like versions of Zamitzi that really don't translate well to a modern setting.
No, they don't. Actually, I'll grab the book. So here is the book I was speaking about. This is the old vampire book, Vampire the Masquerade. Lovely, beautiful book. Beautiful art done by a man, I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
If only you had it written in front of you somewhere.
If only I have it in this book. Here was the art for Nosferatu.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. I was like, I don't think. Here's the Sabbat. Okay, yeah. So there are rules for the Sabbat characters. Like they have La Sombra, and they have. Here was Zamitzi. There we go. That's what I was looking for.
Oh wow! All right.
Yeah. So it was very different. Their disciplines were different, things like that, and like the only two Sabbat clans listed under the Sabbat in this book are La Sombra and Zamitzi. So like, anyway, played a Nosferatu because also still very much at that point into rogues, and I found out Nosferatu have obfuscate, and I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wasn't so much into the Banu Hakim anymore. The idea I think I was really into the movie The Mummy.
Who wasn't, right?
Yeah, and so I framed that character after Imhotep in appearance with like a silver mask and a black cloak kind of thing.
Yeah.
God, I hate myself.
There's no problem with like basically building a character out of pop culture in a system.
There isn't.
Like honestly, I think that like especially early playing, that gives you constraints, that gives you like a grounding and an idea of what the character is.
Absolutely.
In a way that like you don't have to come up with everything off of the top of your head. You can be like, what would Batman do now that I'm playing Batman, a rogue?
Absolutely. So like, and like I always tell people, especially
actually
when
Batman be a cool paladin build.
Batman would be a cool paladin. Be a vengeance paladin.
Yeah.
Because he is vengeance. He is the knight.
No, he's a vengeance. I am the knight, but with a K.
Yes.
God damn it.
Off track. Where are we? It was yeah. So I always tell new players, especially with Vampire, is like make a PC that's a little bit close to you as a person. So that because you're going to encounter a lot of other bullshit from your clan and vampire stuff, and that like if the person you were as a human is a little bit closer to you, it's easier to figure all this shit out because you don't have to think so much about what that person would do.
Yeah,
especially I'm talking about first time players. Never played a role playing game before in their life. That's generally what I tell them because it's like this is a different person, but at least base some stuff on you so you can kind of like without second guessing yourself, just make a decision.
Yeah, your level 1 adventure is close to home.
Yes. So that Nosferatu, I don't remember his name, but I think we were doing like a 1930s game. So I had
Okay.
like, I was very much a Nosferatu.
Interesting choice.
Yeah, the guy who was our storyteller, I think, liked that vibe
Yeah.
because I was not storytelling; I was just playing, and like, I think I did like a pinstripe suit, bowler hat wearing Nosferatu
Mm.
initially, and then then we went through a time jump where we went like 100 years or whatever into modern times. Well, not modern times, but like we
Yeah,
went. That
which is
wasn't like a
which
hundred.
is something you can do
Yeah.
in Vampire.
So we did a time jump, and I think I had Diablerized as a Medi, which is now part of the Hakata, which are the vampires that continue to rot after they're turned. So I was not only a Nosferatu, but I was also decaying, which is why then I had the robe and the mask and the whole thing. I talk about vampire and Outstar messages me. What's going on? Anyway, shout out to Outstar. But yeah, so that character was fun, and I loved it. I loved playing Nosferatu. It ended in which I'm sure I told the story before, but it ended in we had a Halloween game where my storyteller was like, I don't know how to end this game, and I don't want to play anymore. I was like, oh, okay, not the best, not what you would think of as it was. Early 2000s. It was like games were different then. He's like, I want to finish this game. There was no session zero. There was no like consent conversations. There was no like, hey, are you okay with it? Nothing. There was just like we sat at a table and we played a thing, and we were kind of mean to each other. It was not great. So it was a Halloween game, and he wanted me to murder the rest of the players just to end the game, just to be like, that's done. Everyone's dead. Goodbye. So I did. We did a bunch of like things, and like I fought everybody at the table. We did a bunch of one-on-one fights, and I killed everybody, and that was it. And then people were using like way outside game knowledge of being like, well, you murdered that player, so like I'm definitely suspicious of you. I'm like, you don't know anything.
Which I suppose in a world where like you're not having those consent conversations and things like that, you like need to have that distance from like truly sinking into a character. And I think that's one of the things that drew us to this kind of like actual play stuff is that you can sink into a character in a way that you people don't get to explore as much. Like this is not like TTRPGs let you do this. You don't have to.
Yeah.
It's not the only way it can be played, but the resurgence of TTRPGs in general partially came from rules getting more palatable and more straightforward.
Yeah.
And it partially came from these like ex-theater kids who missed that one day where you got to do dramatic improv.
Yeah.
And it was like, cool, this is a skill you're never gonna need.
Never.
And we all collectively went, I'll show you.
I like that skill. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, essentially
turn this into an industry.
So I played that game, and then that game ended, and like, yeah, that very much. I was a different person then. Like, it was not. There was no like. There was no Critical Role, if you can imagine that. There was no what? Huh? There was no one doing tabletop content online as far as I knew, and like online was different then. Like there wasn't like people talking about it. There weren't like there wasn't Instagram and Twitter and all these places. I'm sure someone had a live journal somewhere that was talking about tabletop RPGs, but I didn't know where it was.
Right.
So we just kind of played games, and like that game ended, and then we play a lot of Fomori, which Jason will hate me forever for. And like that game, those were fun and fucked up, and like we were so edgy, and like all we wanted to do was do fucked up shit, and like it was just not a good time. It wasn't like
Yeah, so that is the other thing that like we've not really delved into at all. Is like World of Darkness has more than just Vampire more than just Vampire the Masquerade.
Yes.
There's Mage, the Ascension.
Yes.
There's Werewolf. There's Fomori. There's
so Fomori is kind of World of Darkness. Fomori was like an offshoot thing that was like you were playing as the bad guys from Werewolf, which were like the things the worm created, and it was not really an official thing that World of Darkness did, but it was very funny. So official, like the broad spectrum of World of Darkness. There's Vampire, of course. There's Mage, as you said. There's Werewolf. There's Changeling,
Oh
there's
yeah.
Wraith, there's Mummy, there's uh, Demon the Fallen, and I
Oh
know I'm
wow.
forgetting some other ones.
There's tons to explore.
Yeah, there was a lot. The ones that have been brought more into modern times is like Changeling and uh, for 5th edition, there's only Werewolf, Hunter. Oh, Hunter's one. A Werewolf, Hunter, and Vampire are the ones that are in 5th edition right now. The
Mhm.
rest are still within their like 4th or 3.5 versions of themselves.
Yeah. And some of them partially because I'm assuming it's harder to translate over than
Yeah.
others.
Then some of
Yeah.
them is like don't have as much of an audience. Like I think
Yeah.
Wraith is super cool. I think Changeling's very cool. Changeling the Lost. Don't the Dreaming is too much. There's two different versions of there's like there's Vampire the Masquerade and there's Vampire the Requiem. There's Changeling
Yeah.
the Lost and Changeling the Dreaming. And I like the Lost. The Dreaming is
Yeah.
too like it was bordering into that where Mage sits, which Mage is a great game, but also like incredibly complicated, where it's very much like a way of playing that's like I'm really putting my imagination into this game, and what I can imagine is what can happen, and it just becomes and not in like a you can imagine anything in a tabletop game. It's like no, I'm gonna do a thing,
Yeah.
and it's only in my imagination, which affects the world, and it's like it's a whole thing, and it's just it's so much. And the Lost is way powered down, which makes it easier, and like cool stuff can happen without feeling like what are you doing? Like, you know,
And
it's like
it's really interesting that this world is so big.
yeah,
There are so many things going on in it and so many different ways you can play too. Because like Vampire has the TTRPG, the
yep,
video games, the LARP,
yep,
like so many different ways that you can get into this world. And yet, and at the same time, you know, the Dungeons and Dragons comparison is going to be the most obvious one.
yeah,
D&D has that thing where you can be like, you could be literally anything, and people get that paralysis of infinity of like,
yeah,
if I can be anything, how do I choose what is right?
right,
With Vampire, you weirdly have like guardrails a little bit in
hmm
that like there is a structure to the Camarilla. There is a structure to the way the world works.
yeah,
There is like, there's, you can put flavor on things, and like, I got away with turning into a shark.
yeah,
But it is slightly more designed to have like this consistent feel
yeah,
that gets everyone in a very, very similar vibe.
yeah.
Um,
That's a very good point.
and I
So
think like with other RPGs, there's the possibility that you're kind of like not in sync with each other as much. Whereas at least, you know, getting a bunch of actors in a room to play Vampire, the interesting thing is like we all kind of hit that rhythm.
yeah,
And maybe like some of the older versions where you could do a lot more murder and be bad guys, and like there was less like concern of humanity. Maybe that was like the asynchronicity of it, like
right,
the rift that would be formed. But modern Vampire, it does feel like they've struck like this perfect chord of like, okay, you are attracted to this because you're attracted to a certain vibe of playing,
right.
and that in and of itself like makes the game a little bit more streamlined.
So yeah, that's a very interesting point, and I agree with you in that like because I think it stems from the base of where the games are, how the games are constructed.
Mhm.
D&D is a combat simulator. Nothing about D&D lends itself to tell you how to run social interactions. I'm being general here, but
Yeah,
most of it is all of the things and the rules that are in D&D are based in encounter preparation and dungeon design and like all of these things that are meant for combat and puzzles.
yeah,
Vampire and the way it is written and designed is a social game. The combat is not balanced, which I don't think it should be. It's combat in, quote unquote life is not balanced. It's like it is a thing where some powers are more powerful in a combat situation, some powers are powerful in a social situation, and that's fine.
yeah.
But the game is definitely based in social interaction, deal making, and talking to other people. It is a speaking game. You
Yeah.
can play D&D without ever doing a character voice or ever being your characters. You can say, my character does this, my character buys a thing, my character haggles with the shopkeeper. You can't do that in Vampire. Like, I mean, I guess you can, but you can't, like, it's you're gonna miss a big portion of the game without.
That's not what it's designed to highlight.
Yes, it's not the game itself is highlighting character interaction and being in character, because the tabletop RPG and the LARP were basically, as far as I know, kind of created at the same time. So it is very highly linked to LARPing, which is why LA by Night and all of the shows we did look like that, is because, Jason, in storytelling Vampire, there's a certain amount of becoming of the character that is encouraged and needed to play a satisfying game of Vampire.
Yeah. And like, it's also got such interesting constraints that come from existing in the real world.
Yes.
Like whether you make up a fake city or you have a real city, like we did in LA or in New York.
Yeah.
Just saying like, hey, this is modern times, normal people. You go outside and anyone could be kindred.
Yeah.
That gives like everyone this base understanding. There are, Dark Ages games and things like that. Like you can play, games from the past, and I guess you could even run a game in the future. I don't know quite what that would look like.
Dracula 3000, let's go. What a bad movie. Yeah, no, 100%. Like, Dark Ages is very cool in that, like, yeah, you can play Dark Ages as very much I am the fucking 350-year-old vampire who is the lord of a castle who commands all these peasants, but you can also play Dark Ages as, like, you're just turned and you're a fucking peasant. And you don't know anything. Like, you don't know anything. And you're just like, I don't know what to do. The sun hurts now. Like, I like, I never did that before. Like, which I think is a very interesting way to play Dark Ages, is to play from the perspective of someone who's fucking dumb, who just like is just got turned and left. And you're like, oh no, what do I do? I don't. They're gonna burn me and throw garlic at me. Like, what? Like, I don't, like, if I tell any people. Because the Masquerade didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like, it was a thing of like, you just were a vampire, and people knew you existed. People were like, yeah, vampires exist. I gotta kill them with a stake. Like, it's whatever. I know it doesn't work like that. I know you go and put in a torpor. I understand, but they did, the human beings in that time. Never mind.
Right. They said that woman washed her clothes somehow. Which?
Yeah, don't come at me in the comments that don't exist and yell at me that, like, I got a rule wrong. I've been getting rules wrong since before you played Vampire.
I've forgotten more than you'll ever know. Rules. And mostly because I forget things.
Look, you're always going to fuck up a rule, and it's fine. It's like, it's just one of those things. Like, you're going to forget something. I mean, in a home D&D game that I ran a long time ago, Joey consistently misused spiritual weapon, and I didn't catch it for years. So it's like,
it's always interesting too. Like, I think it's really funny when you know one system, like when you've just been introduced to one system, that system really well. Probably more so than like the DMs on Twitch that have run a bunch of different games. When you start to learn other systems is when they all start to bleed together.
Yes.
And even like just going from 3.5 to 5e in D&D, like all of a sudden you're going like, oh, which was this again? Or, something like that.
Well, it's like, I know World of Darkness, and like the base World of Darkness world's not, not the subsections of which game, but like the core World of Darkness rules, the D10 system. I know it like the back of my head. And I know what I said. And but like when we went over to, like, I was DMing D&D or whatever, I was like, that's unbalanced, but whatever, it might be, and like, I would just get in these headspaces where I was like, this is a social game, whatever, it doesn't matter how the power is specifically used. If you want to use it that way, sure. Like, and then I'd go, oh, that was real broken, and we did that wrong, and that was breaking the whole game. I need to fix that. And like,
Yeah, which, like, like you were saying with Vampire, it's like sometimes the game is broken and it's unbalanced,
Yeah.
and it's about the way you run the game to like see whether that's okay or not. Because if you're in a very like competitive, combat heavy min max
Yeah.
style game where like you are really building a game that has to challenge players' ability to understand their character sheet and play combat tactically and strategically, you need the rules to be balanced because the margins are so thin. If you are playing a game that is more social, that is more collaborative storytelling,
Hmm.
and is more kind of like rule of cool type thing,
Yeah.
it's like you can fudge stuff all the time because ultimately you kind of know there's this unspoken rule that people won't take advantage of it.
Yes, the problem does come from when you are doing a rule of cool type of situation, and someone goes, "Well, technically it does this," and I go, we aren't doing technicallys here."
Yeah.
Like it's like, we
Well,
all agreed.
technically, the book says I can do what I want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I control the world, so technically it does this.
Yeah.
No, it's Vampire is a game that like, and like after those initial games I played in high school, like I played for a long
Yeah.
time. Probably played till I was about from the age of 14 or 15 till the age of probably 19. I played a lot. Like that was a lot of my weekends were just us doing like one shots and whatever. And we would do one shots that which I've run for you, Joey, and for other
Yeah.
friends of ours, where it's like you as the person you, Joey Rassool, are sitting in a room and the game starts there and you are playing yourself and something happens and you have to deal with it. And like I ran those games a lot just with the base World of Darkness D10 system.
Yeah, it's based off the Mortals system,
Yeah.
which I guess would be another. Is that kind of Hunter?
Yeah.
Essentially?
There's Mortals rules in the Vampire book as well to make Mortals, and this was more based in I think it was like third edition or the Requiem era
Mm-hmm.
Mortals or World of Dark. I have it. It's a World of Darkness base book that's just like it's meant for being a person. It's like an X-Files game. Like you're a human being in the World of Darkness, and like things exist.
Yeah.
So I would run those rules, a very pared down system of just like, this thing happens and you got to deal with it. But I don't think I don't think I played another tabletop game. I think from the age of 19, I don't think I played again until I was 25 or 26.
Yeah, roundabout when like D&D was having its resurgence.
Right when D&D was having its resurgence and Critical Role was doing their thing and everybody was getting back, and it got me back into D&D, and actually, well, not back into it, playing it for the first time.
Yeah.
And was running a home game. And then I think a year later or so, I got the call about LA by Night, and I was like, I love Vampire. Yeah, I want to play it. I had no idea what that was going to be.
It all kind of like happened like back to back, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because so like I'm trying to think of, I think it was like Critical Role that got me into 5e D&D.
Yeah.
But Vampire, we had actually done something like a little bit before for the LARP.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Yeah. So if I don't remember the book specifically, but
By Night
there's
Studios.
yeah. So there's a LARP rule book. He's got a copy of it.
I have it. No, it's not By Night Studios. Sorry, it was the Mind's Eye Theater.
Yes.
It was this book.
So there's this book out in the world, which is not the tabletop RPG. It's the LARP rules.
It's also by By Night Studios. Never mind, I was right.
It's the LARP rules, and it's still World of Darkness, still same kind of clans and everything that you'd expect, but it's just for the LARP play, and Alex and I are in that book.
Yes.
Along with a bunch of our friends and a bunch of people you might recognize now from like either the Nerdosphere or the tabletop RPG world.
Yeah, we all got hired to come in and pose for photos so they could have representations of the clans. I believe I'm the Naharaja, which are also now part of the Hakata.
Yeah. And I am the sheriff.
You are the sheriff in the book. You are the representation of the sheriff. That's right.
Yeah.
I believe
and there was
Cynthia
like
Marie is also Banu Hakim in the book, if I remember
Yep.
correctly. Like a bunch of people are in there.
Yeah. Jason's in there.
Yeah.
Jack
Jack
Conway,
Conway is in
friend
there.
of
Yes.
ours. That's how I found out about World of Darkness. Really, it's his Malkavian tattoo. I was like, "What the hell is that?"
Yeah.
Um,
Yes. So we have two friends. Jack Conway, who has a Malkavian tattoo, who he will be so annoyed that we've said this on the podcast. And then our producer, our good friend Tom, has a mage tattoo, and then
Yeah.
I am the third of the group of us that has a World of Darkness tattoo because I have a Zemitzi tattoo.
Which, by the way, shout out to Tom. Like, we have not
Yeah.
talked enough about Tom. Like, you
Yeah.
guys have are familiar with many of the players and people who are in front of the camera for New York by Night and LA by Night. And Tom Menino has stepped in to help us make Project Ghostlight in not just the show itself, but even just like podcasts like this and helping us by letting us laser focus in on what we're doing and taking care of so many things behind the scenes to make sure that the ball keeps rolling. So thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
We literally could not do this without you.
Absolutely not. And I am good at like two things, and I can't like all the other things. I was like, I don't want to do any of this. Like, but yeah. So we all have World of Darkness tattoos, which is very funny. And like, I don't know, World of Darkness has been a part of my life for a long time, and I absolutely adore it. I mean, yes, there was problems, and there's problems in any system. D&D has had its problems and historically bad things, and like I would argue that World of Darkness has been better about changing their problematic stuff than D&D has. But
I think partially because it was like more obvious what needed to change, and like
yeah, that's fair.
And there were like less stakes for changing it.
Yeah.
Like if we all of a sudden, addressed Drow in 5e, like that changes a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's not quite as, depending on your perspective, it's not quite as offensive as some of the stuff that existed in 5e.
Sorry, Vampire. It's there was some problematic stuff, and for when you're setting a game in a world where it's like, okay, this is the World of Darkness. This is a place where fucked up stuff happens.
Yeah.
This is a place where all the bad stuff happens. Then there is a certain group of people who go, great, all of the bad stuff that I like and wish existed, I'm going to role play that out. And it's like, no, man, that's not what we meant. We meant this is a safe space to explore dark themes while still being a safe space to play a game, which in the 90s was not something that was communicated well or at all ever, and not necessarily, I don't mean just by the people who made World of Darkness, but by like everybody who were playing tabletop. No one was making, I'm sorry, I don't mean no one. I'm sure there were people playing games who were like, this is a safe space, and they were doing the work. But it wasn't a popular theme. It wasn't spoken about in public. And also tabletop games weren't spoken about at all, ever. They
were just like every little ecosystem existed in its small little world, and whether that became harmonious or not, like those echoes did not ripple out into the rest of the community because the community was fractured, not just in World of Darkness, but in all tabletop RPGs. Like there was just not a way to like really communicate about how a table works in one group versus another.
No.
And eventually the community grew big enough that those like little pools, little communities just kind of flow over into each other. And we got one big ocean that now communicates with each other. I lost that analogy partway through.
I mean,
but you know what I mean?
Yeah, fish talk. It's
and then Aquaman comes in and communicates for all of us.
Yeah.
And he comes in and just says, I'm pretty sure this is what they said.
Yeah, this is what the
octopus want.
Yeah. So that was the thing, is like, and I'm sure there, like, obviously there are game groups that were around that were doing great, and like, but like my home game group at that time, we got into arguments all the time. It was like, you did this to my character, that made me mad, but like we would get into arguments because we didn't know how to like communicate that, like, hey, this is in character, I'm not doing this to you. And like, and I would do shit, and then I'd be like, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to like fucking stab you. It was
and those things, like those conversations are still happening today. Like, when you run a game with friends, you were going to run into kind of like friction. That's not like, we're not saying that the world is beyond that now.
No.
It's just like we have more like points of comparison to be like, was that okay?
Yeah, and and plenty of game systems now, rulebooks included in Vampire in the V5 version as well, has like, hey, have a session 0 with your like group. Talk about what kind of game you want. Talk about
Yeah.
what's okay, your lines and veils or whatever it's referred to in the book. Like, you
Yeah,
know,
because I think like before, like even publishers weren't aware of like the ecosystems that these games were being
no,
played in. Like they were aware of how they played the game,
yes.
and all of that, but like the back and forth was not there as much as it is today.
No, and you can't anticipate how people are going to. You're going to put out a rule set. You're going to put out a world and be like, "Hey, this thing's cool. Look at it." And people are going to use it in all sorts of ways. And
Mhm.
you can't anticipate every which way someone's going to take what you did and make a game out of it or do fucked up shit with it. Like it's like it
Right.
makes someone feel bad. Like it's human beings are very creative and not always in the best ways. And so, well, you do terrible things with a thing that is a cool piece of art and go like, oh, the way I want to use this is the worst way ever. And it's like, oh
Yeah.
fuck, okay, yeah, but like getting back to like World of Darkness and like
Yeah.
what this game, I called attention back to myself to say something and I don't know what it was.
Well,
This game is, as I said, very important to me, and like it's my way of playing it has evolved over many years.
yeah.
And as I said, I used to, be kind of an edgy shitty teenager and wanted to do stuff. And like now I've, after going through LA by Night and like my play style and the way I approach characters for RPGs is morphed greatly since I started LA by Night. It was like, it was a very different, thing then. I was like, oh yeah, I'll make a character and like, that's cool. There's a lore sheet. And like, I was
Yeah.
not putting the thought that you would, think I would put into like I was not putting the thought into Jasper when I made him that I would put into a character now.
Yeah.
I stumbled into Jasper. I did some stuff when I wrote like a fucking 2-second backstory. Like it was like, I was like, he's a guy from New York. He did a fucked up thing. He was in LA. He has a girlfriend now. And like
Yeah.
that was Jasper's backstory. Like it was just like, I don't know, fucking whatever. Let's play this game. Let's play this game that's going to be one season and we're never going to play Vampire again. Like that was my thought process.
Because that's what we thought was going to happen. Like, so we were at Geek and Sundry.
Yep.
They had, they had kind of just lost Critical Role.
Yeah.
Critical Role had left. They were in this transition period where episodes were still airing, but they were going to like Alpha as well. Watch Alpha. And then Critical Role had gone off and had their own channel. And, even before Critical Role, like the Geek and Sundry was kind of like petering out. Critical Role jumped them back up, and then Critical Role left. So it was like, oh no, the doors are starting to close for real now.
Yeah.
And there was stuff being thrown at the wall to like see what could stick, and Vampire was one of those.
Yeah.
And so like we all entered into it thinking like, yeah, we might just get 8 episodes of this.
Yeah.
Um,
and then we kind of came in and we aired on a Friday night. And I think on that Friday night, we hit like, I think anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 live viewers at a certain point. And Geek and Sundry went, whoa.
Yeah. Because it is a unique game. And like, okay, so one of the things, especially for a game the size of Vampire the Masquerade, I'm sure other TTRPGs do this, but I can't think of another game that has supplemental material that could very well be in world.
Yeah.
Like the Book of Nod.
Yeah.
If you pick up a copy of the Book of Nod, it reads like a Bible for Kindred, but one that could just as easily be in world. Like page for page, it would be exactly what your character is finding. And that creates like such immersion. Even like the actual core rule books themselves, like the core rule book for 5e, I'm very sorry guys, it's hard to understand.
Yeah.
It's not a easily accessibly laid out rule book. but it is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like it takes a while to get to grips with like how to make a character
Yeah.
and how to run a game. But in the process of doing so, like you've become so immersed in this world.
Yeah.
Not super conducive for like, hey, we're gonna shoot in 20 days. You gotta like figure this out.
Yeah, teaching new people to play vampire is great. Like if you have the time to devote to reading the rule book, which
Yeah.
but like it will bring you through and teach you the world and the vibe as it's teaching you the game, which is a great thing. It's not good for like I need to go to the character creation part and make a character really quick. Like it just doesn't work that way. And like which is fine, and like I know how to make a character, but like I've as with doing this show that we are in the process of
Or
creating.
there's at least one thing that he's always gotten wrong since the dawn of time, and we'll just never know.
It's possible.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What was the thing on like the Pips, the organization of the Pips?
That I called Jason out on?
Yeah, like
even Jason gets things wrong on
Yeah.
occasion. And like we were doing season 1 of New York by Night, and we were building characters. We were on set. We were at our tables, and Jason was explaining how the humanities slider worked. I was like, it's backwards. You got it the wrong way. Like I was like, it goes the other way.
And I don't know if he had gotten it wrong for all of LA by Night as well, and just had never done it correctly, or if it was just in that moment said it wrong. But it's one of those things that like I think it put everyone at ease on set too, of just like we're just vibing here, like everybody's okay. It's like if you mess up something, it's not actually, it doesn't hurt the story to mess up.
Well, and that's a good point. And it's like, yeah, that was the humanities slider runs differently, the opposite way than the health and stamina or the health and willpower bars, because it's easier to lose humanity when you have a high amount of humanity. Anyway,
yeah,
yes, that's the thing. Is that let me clap into the mic? Sorry,
that's the thing.
Yeah, the this place has everything, and fucking up a rule doesn't matter. Like so much of the internet is like, you got this wrong, you didn't do that right, you did. Who cares?
Yeah,
you're playing a game. It's not like you're playing Settlers of Catan and the rules actually matter. I've never played Settlers of Catan. I don't know if they matter. But it
just hoard sheep. That's pretty much all you need to know.
Was it cool? Did it do a cool thing? Did you have an impactful moment in the story? And I know this is not a unique take, and I know people have said this all the time, but like, if it didn't like completely destroy your game, which I don't know what rule would, it's fine. Like, let it go. Fucking play your game. It doesn't matter. Like, it should, this is supposed to be fun, and if it's not fun, why are you doing it? Because it's a really annoying thing to do if it's not fun.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And I would go so far as to say, like, you can create a world where the rules don't matter, because like that's part of how you're fostering it. Again, like if you're running like a razor thin margin game where characters are like literally fighting for their lives all the time, then the rules really do start to matter, because you've made them matter. But if you're running a game with a lot of margin and you're letting the players explore that ability to fail, like to make the player choice to have the character fail because it's better for the story, or anything like within that, then you're probably going to end up with a better story, because you're not having to do 80% yourself and let the other 20 happen on dice rolls.
Yeah, exactly. And like, if you've decided to play a game of a World of Darkness or Vampire specifically, that those rules are on a razor's edge and those margins matter. You picked a system that's real hard to do that in, and you probably should have picked a different system. But like, I get it. But also, just fucking fix it. Just go like, oh, we got that wrong, whatever. Like, it's fine. You're like, when we do it on camera, we don't even care. We're like, yeah, that was wrong. But we've done Dominate wrong the entire time we've done any by Night series. Dominate has been used wrong, and we just kept going.
Well, and so this is one of the interesting things, right? Like, I think one of the things that made LA by Night unique is like all these other TTRPGs that were coming out weren't being necessarily put on by the company that was
Yeah.
producing the book. We had when we were at Geek and Sundry, it was directly working with World of Darkness, working with Paradox, White Wolf, however that shakes out, and working with
It's World of Darkness now. I don't think White Wolf is still a company as far as I remember. It is now just World of Darkness, and then Paradox is the parent company.
Gotcha. I know my TTRPG stuff. And then like working with Jason, like managing the entire brand of World of Darkness. And at the time, like he wasn't originally slated to be the storyteller.
No.
Like they wanted a different storyteller,
Yeah.
and we couldn't find someone who had the right vibe
Mhm.
and availability.
Yeah.
And so it ended up being that like we had a representative from the company who really, really understood the vibe, really understood what makes a good game, running the game for us. And
Yeah.
that's how we were kind of, I mean, I know you were very familiar with it from before that,
Yeah.
but that's kind of how we were all indoctrinated. Like we got this kind of like direct from the source,
Yeah.
and so did everybody watching. They got this kind of like unfiltered version of the game.
Yeah. And we still got rules wrong. And
Yeah.
Jason is sitting in my living room right now with his ham hock, and I he got rules wrong, and it was fine, and it was great, and arguably made things more interesting because we did things differently, and like not it wasn't interesting because we did things differently, but the way we did dominate and the way we did other things, the way Jason made our beasts talk to us, which is not in the rules of the game, like it made a more dynamic story, and I think it told a better story, and that's fine. And what is important about these games is that you tell a good story, not that you get the rules right.
Yeah. I will say that like Vampire does have like this layer of feeling like it's not as accessible as something like D&D 5e because there is that and like maybe not every game, because again like my exposure to this is very kind of like limited to a certain perspective of
Valid.
having played with Jason and with yourself, but it is very much does seem like it's more of a challenge to come into a game like Vampire than like the most accessible point of D&D.
Well, I think the reason for that is that what the base concepts of D&D as far as like character class and stuff like that have been so, and I'm not saying that by any means that fucking D&D originated any of this, because it didn't, but it was like they took narrative constructs as far as like a character class, a ranger, a fighter, a wizard that existed in fiction and existed all over the place, and they were commonplace knowledges, and just put them into a game. So at first glance, D&D is something that is easier to understand because you're like, I understand those concepts. I know what a wizard is. I know what a knight is. I know what an elf with a bow is. I've seen Lord of the Rings. I've read books like this. I know what these things are.
Do you know the first edition of D&D had hobbits in it, by the way?
Yes, it did.
Like not halflings.
It had hobbits.
Like,
and
then all of a sudden someone took issue with that.
An elf was a class. But yeah. So when you look at Vampire, regardless of edition, you're like, okay, I know what vampires are. I don't know what all these words mean.
Yeah.
I don't know what a bruja is. I don't know what a tremere is. Like, I don't get this. It doesn't like immediately equate to something. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're a person like me growing up who watched a lot of vampire movies, then I was like, oh, I understand what a bruja is. A bruja is somewhere between a near dark vampire and a Lost Boys vampire. Like, I understand that like a Toreador is an Anne Rice vampire, is a Lestat. I get that. I understood that. That's what attracted me to the game in the first place. But if you don't have that base knowledge and you don't understand those concepts and not even understand if you haven't been exposed to them, then you can bounce off Vampire because you're like, I get being a vampire, but why are there so many different choices? Why do I have to do all these things? I don't understand. Why do I roll so many dice? If you're used to playing D&D
Yeah.
where D20 determines most things, and now you're suddenly rolling 7 D10s, you're like,
Well, some of us are rolling 7d10s. Some of us are rolling 3.
yeah. You rolled 9 and still failed.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many I roll.
That's another point. But yeah, it is a game that you can bounce off, and because it doesn't have the cultural, like, the
Yeah.
connection to the cultural zeitgeist as much as D&D does, and also because of things like Stranger Things and because of things like Critical Role, honestly, is that
Yeah.
D&D is now more of a household name than any other thing that exists in the tabletop space.
Well, and I think fantasy RPGs in general, right?
Yeah.
Because like there is that shared terminology of
Yeah.
like there's the unspoken agreement across most fantasy that like elves are tall and semi-immortal
Yeah.
and lithe and
Although they didn't used to be in D&D, they used to be short.
yeah, because they were more Christmas elves. And then
We're gonna go on an adventure.
I use my +3 bow.
I want to make an elf that's like that in D&D now. Shit.
But then, yeah, and dwarves were, very, very much like an archetype.
Yeah.
And like you said, like vampires fit into all of those. Like there's a version in pop culture that fits into each. Like you could probably take every pop culture vampire and put it into a clan.
Yes,
in
100%.
World of Darkness, but the terminology didn't cross over. Like,
and that's what they did. The people making World of Darkness, or vampires specifically, went, oh, what are the types of vampires? Let's look at pop culture. Let's look at all the movies and the books that are existing now, and let's make vampire clans for all of those things so they can fit into the world. They did the work. It just didn't translate when the general public got a hold of it. They went, I don't know what those words mean. And then, like, it was, and also, it's like...
Nosferatu's the only one.
Nosferatu's the only one. Yeah, it's just, it is a slightly more difficult thing to deal with, and to understand, and that's fine. And like, but the game itself is not any, I would argue, is not any harder than a D&D. It's not any more difficult to play, and in some cases, well, and then depending on how you are as a player and what you like, it could be easier, than D&D, where you don't have to remember so much math. You don't have to remember so many things. You just go, oh, I have 2 dots in strength and 2 dots in brawl. I roll 4 dice. It's basic arithmetic. It's that is an easier part. There's much less math, but there's more complicated social situations and things like, and the like. But yeah, it is a great game, and it is a game that I think everybody who is a fan of tabletop RPGs should play. And it is a something they did wonderfully with V5 is change the way hunger, this is going into specific rules, but change the way hunger works from a resource to a risk management system.
Mm.
So it used to be that you had a blood pool, and it was basically mana. You had mana to cast your disciplines. It was like, I have this much blood in me, and I can use this many abilities. And then once you were out of blood, you just couldn't use abilities. It didn't do anything. It was an uninteresting system.
Yeah.
And what they did with V5 is change it to the hunger system, which is a risk management system, which you roll to see if you get hungrier every time you use an ability. Mostly. Some abilities don't require a rouse check, but that's whatever. And the hungrier you get, the easier it is to fail or cause problems with everything you do, not just discipline usage, which is a much better system, a much more interesting system. And I love that system. And I think it was one of the best things they changed with in moving from like 3 and 4 to 5.
Yeah.
It brings this, not only a balancing system, but an in-character worry of, fuck, if I haven't fed in a long time, if I use this ability that can help me in this situation, I might freak out and like ruin everything. And that's a really cool thing to have to deal with. Failure, specifically in World of Darkness games, is so important. Failure makes so many interesting stories, and succeeding all the time is boring.
Yeah.
You are playing a game of personal tragedy, and you are playing a game of personal horror, and it is important to fail and lean into your failures. Otherwise, you don't get the outcome of the story.
And I think like it speaks to the way the game was designed, that there are even things that like there's a success failure, essentially.
Yeah,
Like getting a messy critical is in a weird way both a failure and a success.
absolutely.
Because it is like a mark of ultimate success, but to the point where you've probably pushed other things too far and you've probably made the situation worse
Yeah.
by succeeding.
Yeah. Now we talked
And
about like to get into rules conversations, but like something about character generation, and I know I could talk about this forever, and I'm sure we'll have our other episodes where we go more in depth on
this is
certain
the only time we're ever going to talk about Vampire, you guys. We're never talking about the system ever again.
Yeah, never again. No more vampire. I'm never.
Yeah.
It's gonna be difficult for me to
Get
run
it all
this
out
game.
now.
So one of the things I want to touch on quickly is when you're making characters. People tend to make a person make the human being that becomes the vampire. They tend to make that human being turn into the clan that is most like them as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, that's what a lot of like canonical characters within the world of darkness or sires tend to look for, somebody who fits a clan. And you're like, oh, you're the kind of person who would make sense for my clan, blah, blah, blah. I think characters are much more interesting, and Joey's character Ray is a specific example of this, in that a character who's not supposed to be the clan they ended up being is a much more interesting character to play.
Mm-hmm.
I.e. somebody who clearly should have been a Ventru. Ray clearly should have been a Ventru, gets turned into a gangrel, and becomes a very different thing. And it adds a lot of character depth and a lot of challenge for that character. And I love that thing. Like, Jasper absolutely should have been a Tremere.
Yeah,
Jasper
absolutely.
as a human being should have been a Tremere. That's all he gave a shit about was magic, and like that, and he's a Nosferatu, and he hates it. Like, it's that there is so much more depth to be found in a character.
And you can kind of do that. Like you can do that in other systems, but it doesn't feel as satisfying. It kind of feels like inconsequential to like give your D&D character like a kind of different background than who you're playing. So like,
Absolutely.
oh, I'm taking a charlatan background, but I'm a lawful good right now.
Right. What is it? Yeah, there's an interesting character to be made.
Okay, that feels more like you're min-maxing.
Yes.
Like because you're doing it for a stat.
Right.
Whereas like when you're playing vampire, there's no benefit to making the character that way. It's just more dynamic. It just makes it just informs your decisions more.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. You can look at the way you make a vampire character as though everything that your character is before they become a kindred is effectively your background from D&D.
Yeah.
And so what is more interesting? If you take, say, someone who grew up as a criminal and then becomes a paladin, versus someone who was raised in a monastery, who's worshipped their whole life, who's trained their whole life to become a paladin, becomes a paladin, is not as much of an interesting story.
Right.
Like, it's just like, yeah, the thing happened that I spent my whole life doing that no one interfered with and no one tried to stop me, and everybody was paving the way for me to become this thing. I became this thing.
It can be a safe place to start.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
You might have more fun making it like giving yourself that range to explore.
Yeah, and by all means, I'm not telling you your character's bad. That's not what I mean. I get passionate about things, and I'll sound definite about things, and it doesn't matter. It is a great place to start. It is, and by all means, there can be interesting characters there, because if you really want to dive into I've spent my whole life to do this, and now what am I doing? That is also an interesting arc you can take with a character.
Yeah, because that's the other thing is like a character can find that flip mid-campaign.
But that all leads back to, you have to allow there to be room for doubt and failure in a character, because otherwise, if they keep succeeding in everything and they keep being sure of what they're doing, there's no conflict and there's no story. They have to have self-doubt. They have to have things that knock them down. They have to get back up again. Like, that is what tells an interesting story with characters. And when you take a kindred character and you start them off on one path and they end up somewhere else, it can help inform a much more interesting narrative for that character. And it gives you something to fight against or play with or fail at. And it's important.
Sure is, Alex.
You're gonna add some fucking like morning zoo radio sounds into that.
Okay, we're coming to pretty near the end here. One of the things that I did want to do with all of these is that like there's all kinds of people running all kinds of games, not just Vampire or D&D. So I kind of wanted to impart some general advice that might work in all kinds of TTRPGs, actual plays, and things like that. And we've got a little bit of experience. We've talked to we've played some games. We're friends with people who've played even more games. And one of the things that I wanted to say out loud, because I don't think enough people hear it, is when you are making a world and you are naming things, places, people, stuff like that.
How dare you?
You are allowed to screw up a name. You are allowed to screw up a name. It is fine. Like something will not click in your head. And the second people hear it at the table, they'll make fun of it. Like it happens to everybody.
How dare you expose me like this?
Matt, I wasn't going to. I was just going to say that Matt Mercer has Pervon. Brennan right now, I love Worlds Beyond Number. I love listening to it. But Brennan right now has a villain whose name is Urine. And it's not just that the villain is named Urine.
Yeah.
It's that urine has a distinct smell.
Oh my God.
So he's constantly describing the smell of urine. And I'm like, I know it's urine.
Yeah.
I know that. And I'm pretty sure everyone at the table knows that. But I'm sure like Abria and Erica and Lou are like leaning away from the mics laughing. And they're committed to it. Like if you're saying it with enough confidence, like maybe no one will notice.
Yeah.
But honestly, if you're not, it's fine. Let it be a thing. Let it ride.
Let it ride. I named a city in a D&D campaign that we had started Windshield because it was nestled behind some mountains that were blocking it from the wind, and I thought that was a cool name until I said it out loud, and all of my players went, Windshield? And I went, fuck.
Yeah, you just let it ride. Windshield.
Yeah. Windshield. I definitely changed the name. I did not let it ride. And then we never played that game, so it didn't matter.
That Windshield lasted the entire length of that game.
Yeah, it did. The 2 or 3 sessions of that game.
So that's my advice for the week.
That's good advice. I like that advice. That's really good. Oh man, I forgot about Windshield.
Oh man. So I think we can leave it here.
Okay.
The goal of this is to basically talk about a different system each week. Mm-hmm. Maybe have people on who can talk more about those systems, some of the stuff that we've gotten a chance to play with each other, some of the stuff that we're excited to play, hopefully things that are coming out that we want to check out. One of the weird things that was happening when we were doing Vampire at GNS, because so many things were being like thrown at the wall to see what sticks, is we got exposed to quite a few systems back to back, and some of it never came to pass. There are things like 10 Candles that we did get to make a series out of, but there are also things like City of Mist, which we got pitched and never got to make a series out of, and I really want to talk about it because the art is so cool, and I'll save that for a different episode. Thank you for sitting with us and listening to what we have on the top shelf.
My top shelf, never mind, I'm not gonna get into it. But yes, thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you next time.